Hey there, and welcome to Haunting Lullabies. I'm here to help you unwind and drift into the night with some spine-tingling stories. But before you settle in too comfortably, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe only if you truly enjoy what we do here. Don't forget to drop a comment below telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. It's amazing to feel like we're all part of a global community. A quick heads up. There will be a few ads in the first 15 minutes, but don't worry after that. It's all completely ad-free. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming next because these stories are like no others. So, dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that cozy touch, and let's dive into tonight's haunting tale. It was the kind of neighborhood where everything seemed perfectly normal, until one evening, it wasn't. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when I first noticed her, standing by the moving van at number 38, my new neighbor. The sound of cardboard scraping across pavement, the steady rhythm of packing tape being torn, and the occasional clink of something heavy being set down, all felt like a quiet disturbance to my carefully structured life. I had lived in Acorn Crescent for over 15 years, and let's just say, I had become acquainted with its rhythms. People came, people went, but nothing ever truly changed until she arrived. Her name was Clara Fielding. I had been in my kitchen when I first saw her, the familiar routine of brewing my evening coffee interrupted by the shifting shadows of someone unfamiliar. For the first time in years, I found myself peering out the window, my interest piqued. A woman, probably in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, dressed casually but with the kind of quiet elegance that drew attention without trying. She had dark hair, pulled into a low ponytail, and wore simple jeans and a sweater that looked like it had been chosen with careful thought. Now, I'm not the type to get involved in neighborhood drama. I prefer the comfort of my own home, my own quiet life, free of interruption. But I don't know what it was about Clara that day. Maybe it was the way she carried herself, or the loneliness that I could see behind her calm exterior. Or maybe it was the strange pull she had on my curiosity. By the time I finished my coffee, I had already convinced myself I should go introduce myself, offer help with the unpacking. It's what good neighbors do, right? The last thing I wanted was to seem like the grumpy loner next door. So, I slipped on my jacket and made my way across the street. I knocked lightly on the door frame, and she turned, startled, her eyes, a shade of green that was almost unnerving in their intensity, locked onto mine. There was a moment of awkward silence before she smiled warmly, as if she'd been expecting me. "Hello, I'm Clara," she said, her voice soft but carrying. "I've just moved in. I'm afraid I don't know anyone around here yet." "Welcome to the neighborhood," I replied, offering a warm smile. "I'm Martin. I live across the street, just there." I pointed to my house. I thought I'd come over and offer a hand. I know how chaotic moving can be. Her smile seemed genuine, and she shook her head lightly. "That's kind of you, really. I don't want to impose, but I do have a lot of boxes I could use help with. Some of them are pretty heavy." She nodded toward the stack of boxes by the front door. So, just like that, I found myself lifting boxes, helping her move things into her home. At first, I thought it would be a simple neighborly favor. But as I helped Clara carry heavy furniture into her new living room, I began to notice things that felt off. The house, though newly furnished, had an almost sterile atmosphere to it. The walls were painted a soft, neutral beige, but the furniture felt strangely impersonal, arranged in a way that didn't quite make sense. I also couldn't help but notice the basement door, which Clara hadn't bothered to open, an oddity, considering it was the one room that could be used for extra storage. "I'm sure you're exhausted from all this moving," I remarked casually, trying to break the silence. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "It's nothing I can't handle," Clara replied. But her eyes seemed far away, as if her mind was elsewhere. "I've moved around a lot. Not always by choice, you know. But it's always the same: unpack, get settled, and then leave again. It was while we were carrying a particularly large box from the back of the van that I heard something faint. It was like a soft clicking noise, almost like tapping. At first I brushed it off, assuming it was the sound of the boxes shifting. But it came again, this time louder, more distinct. I paused, my hand still on the box. Clara didn't seem to notice, and I quickly decided it was nothing. But the sound kept coming, a low tapping, like something knocking. I told myself it was just the house settling, or maybe some odd noise from the moving truck. But a small part of me couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I had missed something just a bit wrong. After the last of the heavy lifting was done, I felt a strange relief. I'd helped her settle in, and it was time to get back to my routine. Clara seemed grateful, offering to make me a cup of tea as thanks, but I politely declined. Maybe another time, I said with a smile. I should get back home. It was nice meeting you, Clara. I'm sure I'll see you around. She nodded, giving me a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you again, Martin. You've been very kind. I returned home, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The odd tapping sound. The way Clara had seemed to be watching me too closely when we moved the boxes. I'd helped her unpack, but I couldn't help feeling like I had somehow walked into her life, a life that wasn't as simple as it seemed. That night, as I sat in my living room trying to unwind, I noticed something strange. The street outside was unusually quiet. Too quiet, actually. No sounds of cars passing, no distant chatter from neighbors. And then it hit me. The lights in Clara's house were still on. I glanced at the clock. It was already after midnight. At this hour, most people would be asleep. Yet Clara's house remained lit up, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me from her window. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was late, and I needed to sleep. But I couldn't stop looking. And then I heard it. The same faint tapping sound. This time, it was coming from her basement window. The night air felt thick with something I couldn't explain. And as I stared across the street, I couldn't shake the growing suspicion that Clara's house was hiding more than just boxes. The tapping sound was still faint, but this time, it wasn't just a random noise. It seemed deliberate, like something or someone was trying to get my attention. I pulled the curtains aside a little more, my heart thumping in my chest, and I peered through the crack. Clara's basement window was slightly ajar, just enough to let a cool breeze slip through. The sound was coming from that direction, distant but undeniably there. My mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe it was the pipes. The house was old, after all. Maybe it was a stray animal. But a part of me, the part that couldn't ignore the unease bubbling in my stomach, kept pushing the idea that something wasn't right. The windows were dark, but I could make out the faintest shadow moving inside, right near the basement. I swallowed, torn between curiosity and fear. The following days passed in a blur. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. After all, I was just a neighbor who helped her and move. There was nothing sinister about it. Yet, every time I crossed the street, I couldn't stop looking at Clara's house. I had never been the type to pry into other people's business. But now, it felt impossible to ignore the nagging feeling that something strange was going on. The tapping sound came again the next night. This time, it was louder, almost frantic. I watched as Clara's lights flickered through the window. She wasn't home, but I could hear the noise. I had to know what it was. The following evening, after dinner, I couldn't stand it anymore. I grabbed my jacket, my heart racing. There was no reason for me to be concerned, but the sense of urgency kept pushing me forward. I crossed the street quietly, my eyes flicking nervously to Clara's front door. I tried to convince myself I was just being cautious, but my instincts were already telling me to act. Clara's front door was unlocked. I knew it was intrusive, but I couldn't stop myself. The basement door was at the back of the house, barely visible from the street. It was only when I made my way around the back that I saw a faint crack of light beneath the door. That sound, the tapping, grew louder, clearer, as if it was coming from behind the basement door itself. I hesitated. I was just a neighbor. I had no right to be here. But the pull of my curiosity was overwhelming. I couldn't ignore it. I reached for the door handle. It was cold under my fingers, but it gave way with ease, creaking open to reveal a dimly lit staircase that led downward. I descended the stairs cautiously, the tapping now growing sharper, more rhythmic. I was too deep in now. My breath came in shallow gasps, the air in the basement cool and musty. The single, flickering light overhead didn't do much to reassure me. As I neared the bottom, I saw something that made my stomach drop, a figure standing by the far wall. The faint outline of a person, hunched over, barely visible in the shadows. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, but I stood frozen in place. Was it Clara? Hello? I called out, my voice shaking more than I intended. No response. The figure turned slightly, its movements unnervingly slow. The tap-tap-tapping stopped. Clara? I asked again, my voice now barely a whisper. And then, from the darkness, a voice came, not hers. You shouldn't be here. I froze, unable to move. The voice was deep, rough, almost mechanical in its tone. My mind screamed that I needed to leave, but my legs refused to cooperate. The figure moved again, revealing more of itself. It was a man middle-aged, with unkempt hair and a gaunt, hollow look to his face. His clothes were worn, but oddly familiar. I don't understand, I stammered. Who are you? He said nothing, only stared at me with eyes so vacant, so empty, that I felt a chill run through me. I stepped back instinctively, bumping into a shelf. That's when I saw it, another figure, hidden in the shadows. Another person, another face. This wasn't right. It wasn't just Clara and me. It never was. I turned quickly and bolted for the stairs, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to find the door handle. I was trapped. And then, from the far corner, I heard a familiar sound, tapping. It was coming from the other side of the room. The figure stepped forward. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice cold and filled with purpose. In a panic, I grabbed the door handle and yanked with all my strength. Finally, the door creaked open, but as I darted up the stairs, I heard a voice call from behind. You're part of this now, Martin. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I was safely inside my house. But even as I slammed the door behind me, I knew whatever this was, whatever game Clara was playing, it was far from over. The events of that night left a burning question in my mind. Was I losing my grip on reality? Or was Clara orchestrating something far darker than I could ever have imagined? I sat in my living room, trying to catch my breath. My heart was still hammering in my chest, my mind racing through the images from the basement, the figure in the shadows, the strange, empty eyes. It was all too surreal to process. Was it a dream? A hallucination? The idea that I had stumbled into something that wasn't just strange, but deliberately manipulative, gnawed at me. I didn't want to believe it, but everything I had seen and heard felt real. Clara had been acting strangely ever since the first day I met her, but I had dismissed it. The little oddities, the way she always avoided questions about her past, the unnerving calmness in her voice, even her refusal to speak in detail about why she'd moved here had seemed like minor quirks. Now, I wasn't so sure. And what about the man in the basement? Who was he? What had he been doing there? And why had Clara just let him stand in the shadows like that? There was one thing I was sure of now. I wasn't going to let it go. I had to find out the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I went to Clara's house again. It was just past noon when I arrived at her door. The sun was high in the sky, and the street was as quiet as ever. I knocked, my heart racing as I waited for her to answer. I knew I couldn't just barge in again, but I needed answers. I needed to see for myself if she was truly the woman I thought she was, or if everything was a twisted game I had walked into without realizing. She opened the door, her face bright and welcoming. It was as though the previous night had never happened, as though the basement, the tapping, and the strange figures were just figments of my imagination. "Martin, what a pleasant surprise," Clara said, her voice smooth as ever. Come in, come in. How's everything?" I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise as I stepped inside. Everything in the house looked normal, too normal. The living room was immaculate, a soft lavender scent in the air. The light from the windows bathed the room in a warm glow. There was no sign of the chaos that had lurked in my memory. I need to talk to you," I said, my voice coming out more shakily than I intended. "I've been thinking about last night, and there's something I need to understand." Clara didn't flinch. She simply smiled, nodding as she gestured to the couch. "Of course, Martin. Take a seat. I'm happy to help you work through anything. What's on your mind?" Her calmness unnerved me. She was too composed, too perfect in her responses. I sat down, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I tried to steady myself before speaking. I don't know how to say this," I began, struggling to find the right words. "But when I was at your house last night, in the basement, I saw someone, a man. And it wasn't just him. There were other things, too." Clara's smile never faltered, but I saw something shift behind her eyes, something cold and calculating. It was subtle but unmistakable. "I think you're confusing things, Martin," she said softly. "I told you about my past, about how I've moved around a lot. Sometimes, when we're in new places, our minds can play tricks on us. But you're here now. You're safe. There's no need to worry." I felt my stomach twist. It was as if she were reciting a script, a rehearsed response, designed to soothe, to calm me down. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I know what I saw. I was in the basement. And the man, he spoke to me. He said I wasn't supposed to be there. He told me I was part of something. Clara, I shay." She cut me off with a gentle laugh, a sound that should have been reassuring but only made me feel more on edge. "Martin," she said, her tone affectionate yet patronizing. "It's okay. You're not the first person to feel disoriented. I've been through a lot of changes recently, too. Maybe you're just exhausted. Why don't you take a rest? A bit of time to clear your head, and I'm sure everything will feel better." Her words were like a lullaby, soft, soothing, designed to make me forget the creeping sense of dread I couldn't shake. But I wasn't going to be lulled. Not this time. I left her house feeling more uneasy than ever, but I wasn't about to give up. As I walked back to my own home, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my mind. What did she mean by "you're not the first"? What had she done to the others? I had to keep digging. I had to find something, anything, to prove that I wasn't just imagining things. Clara had her secrets, and I was determined to uncover them. That evening, as I rummaged through some old files in my study, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a local newspaper, tucked in the back of a drawer, dated 6 months ago. It was a brief article, barely a few sentences long, but it caught my eye immediately. Unexplained disappearance of local resident. The article detailed the sudden disappearance of a man who had lived on Acorn Crescent, a man I recognized instantly. His name was Richard Hall, a neighbor from a few houses down. I'd seen him around before, but hadn't known him well. He just disappeared. There was no sign of struggle, no sign of foul play, just a man who had seemingly vanished into thin air. The article was accompanied by a photograph, a blurry image of Richard standing in his front yard. But what made my stomach churn wasn't just the disappearance. It was the detail buried in the last line of the article. Mr. Hall was last seen speaking with a new neighbor who had recently moved into number 38. I felt a chill run through me. Number 38. Clara's house. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Clara was at the center of something. But what? I needed more answers, and I needed them fast. The unease I'd felt earlier was now full-blown terror. I was in too deep now to back out. I had to know what was happening. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized that Clara wasn't the only one involved. There were others. Others who had been moved in, disappeared, and left behind only traces, never any explanation. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, and what I saw was terrifying, a carefully orchestrated scheme, playing out on the quiet streets of Acorn Crescent. The more I uncovered, the more my world seemed to unravel. Clara wasn't just a neighbor. She was part of something far darker, something that had been happening right under my nose for months. The newspaper article about Richard Hall's disappearance was just the tip of the iceberg. As I dug deeper into the strange events surrounding Acorn Crescent, I began to realize that the disappearances weren't isolated incidents. There was a pattern, one that had been happening long before Clara ever moved in. The names changed, the faces blurred, but the story remained the same. New neighbors, strange behavior, missing people. All of them had been connected to Clara in some way. I couldn't let it go. I had to know more. I spent hours combing through old neighborhood records, cross-referencing missing persons reports, and piecing together a timeline. I was desperate, but also terrified. I felt like I was chasing shadows, knowing that the answers I sought might be more horrific than I could imagine. One evening, as I was looking through property records, I found something chilling: documents related to Clara's move to Acorn Crescent. The paperwork was routine, but there was something about it that caught my eye. Her name wasn't Clara Fielding. It was something else, an alias. I ran a quick search and found no record of a person named Clara Fielding ever existing in the area. But there were other names that had passed through the neighborhood. I found one name that repeated itself in the records of other disappearances: Emma Elton. It was the same name I had come across months ago during my research on Acorn Crescent's strange residents. Emma Elton had been involved in several disappearances in the past few years. Each time she had moved in, offered help to her new neighbors, and then they simply vanished. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. It was Clara all along. She had been playing a much bigger role in these disappearances than I had ever realized. But why? What was the end game? What was Clara or Emma really after? I couldn't keep avoiding her. I had to confront Clara. I made my way to her house that night, my nerves on edge. The entire neighborhood was asleep, the streets empty and still. As I approached her door, I could feel my pulse quickening. I didn't know what I was about to face, but I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the only one who had questions. I rang the doorbell, and it was as if Clara had been waiting for me. She opened the door with a smile that seemed too practiced, too perfect. "Martin," she said warmly, "I was wondering when you'd come by. I'm glad to see you. I know things have been a bit strange lately." I looked at her, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. The calmness in her voice only made my blood run colder. "Clara," I said, my voice shaking with frustration, "I know what you're doing. I know about the disappearances, the false identities, and I know you're not the person you claim to be. This is all part of something, isn't it? What do you want?" Her smile didn't fade, but there was a glint in her eyes now, something almost amused. "You've been doing your homework, haven't you?" she said, stepping aside to let me in. "Come inside, Martin. Let's talk. It's long overdue." I followed her inside, my legs moving, on autopilot. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a conversation. This was the moment where everything would change. Once inside, Clara gestured toward the couch, and I sat down, still trying to process everything. She poured me a drink, her movements smooth and measured, like everything was in its place. I couldn't help but feel like I was sitting in a room with someone who knew exactly how this was going to unfold. "I'm not here to threaten you," Clara said, taking a seat opposite me. "I'm not here to harm you, Martin. I just need you to understand." "Understand what?" I shot back. "That you've been orchestrating the disappearances of people in this neighborhood? That you've been using us as some kind of experiment?" Her smile remained steady. "Not exactly. It's not about harm, not in the way you're thinking. It's about observation. It's about seeing how people respond when their reality is slowly dismantled. People like you, Martin, with your predictable routines and your need for structure, those are the ones we study. We see how far we can push someone before they break, before they question everything they know to be true. I sat back, stunned. I had expected many things, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. You're telling me this is some kind of experiment? I said, my voice thick with disbelief. Clara nodded, the calmness in her expression never wavering. Yes, it's a study of human behavior under pressure, and you've been a perfect subject. I've been studying you since the day you helped me move in. Your politeness, your need to be helpful, those are the traits we look for. We've observed how far you'll go to maintain order, even when everything around you starts to fall apart. I couldn't speak for a moment. My mind was reeling. But the man in the basement? The others? Subjects, Clara replied simply. We bring in new participants regularly, but some don't fit our criteria. Some don't last. So we let them go, erase their traces. Richard Hall, for example, he didn't fit the profile. He was too independent, too unpredictable. So we removed him. It's the same with everyone who doesn't work out. But you, Martin, you're perfect. You've been compliant. You've accepted everything without questioning it, even when the world around you started to distort. Your memory, your sense of reality, they've all been carefully manipulated. It was too much. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, trembling with anger and fear. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't just... She raised a hand, cutting me off. Martin, calm down. You're not the first to feel this way. The question is, will you break? Or will you keep fighting, even when you can't trust your own mind anymore? I turned toward the door, my heart pounding. I was done. This was no longer about being a good neighbor or understanding someone's strange quirks. This was about survival. I opened the door, ready to leave, but Clara's voice stopped me. I've been watching you, Martin. You're already starting to doubt. The experiment is already taking effect. And that was when I realized there was no way out. It was all clear now. There was no escape. But what if the final test wasn't about fleeing or fighting, it was about something deeper? I stood frozen at the door, Clara's words echoing in my mind. The experiment is already taking effect. The weight of what she said sank in, and a cold sweat broke out on my skin. I had thought I could escape, that leaving her house meant leaving everything behind. But she was right. I had already been part of this, whether I liked it or not. I glanced back at Clara, standing in the doorway, her face impassive but oddly serene. She wasn't threatening me. She was observing me, just like she had with all the others. I could feel my mind beginning to bend under the pressure of her words. Was she right? Had I already begun to lose myself? Every memory, every detail of my life started to seem distant, like it wasn't truly mine. The house, the neighborhood, the faces I had known. Everything felt like a carefully constructed illusion. But no, I couldn't let her win. I couldn't let this be the end of me. Get out of my head, I shouted, turning to leave, but Clara's calm voice stopped me in my tracks. Where will you go, Martin? She asked softly. You've been here for years. Acorn Crescent is your home. How can you leave when everything you know is right here? Her words sliced through me like a knife. I had spent years of my life in this place, living a routine I had built brick by brick. And now, it was all coming undone. I tried to push through it, to fight the rising panic, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping away. I took a deep breath and turned to face her again. My voice was steady now, though my hands trembled. What is this really about, Clara? Why are you doing this? Clara's eyes softened for a moment, like she was explaining something to a child. It's not just about you, Martin. It's about understanding how human beings react to the unexpected. We've studied you, watched you, and learned so much about how you function. You're predictable, but not in a bad way. You cling to routine, to certainty, and when that is stripped away, you either bend or break. I shook my head, my thoughts clouded. So, this whole thing, all these people disappearing, it's all part of your experiment? Yes, Clara said, her tone unwavering. We choose people who are isolated, people who are easy to manipulate, the ones who need structure, the ones who crave stability. You're perfect for this, Martin. You fit the profile, and you've already begun to break. But you don't realize it yet. Your mind is beginning to question itself. Your reality is starting to crumble. The panic returned. How much of what I had seen was real? The man in the basement? The strange noises? The people I thought I'd known? Were they all part of this twisted game? I felt my world closing in. Every inch of it felt like a lie. I backed away from Clara, my chest tightening. I had to get out of there. I couldn't be a part of this. I wouldn't be. But as I moved toward the door, I realized something: there was no escape. Not physically, not mentally. This wasn't just about running away or breaking free. This was about trust. Do you still believe in what you've built here, Martin? Clara's voice came from behind me, calm and probing. Do you believe in this reality? I stopped. I couldn't move. Everything I had ever known, everything I had built my life around, was being questioned. The very foundation of my existence was crumbling beneath me, and I wasn't sure I could stand it much longer. But I had to answer her. I had to make the choice. I turned slowly, looking Clara in the eye. No, I don't believe in this anymore. For the first time since I'd walked into this house, Clara's expression flickered. It wasn't anger, but something deeper, almost disappointment. You see, Martin, she said, her voice cold now, that's the point. You've reached the breaking point. You've questioned everything. You've doubted yourself. And that's exactly what I wanted. The experiment isn't about the physical. It's about the mind. And now, you're a part of it. You'll never be the same again. A sickening realization spread through me. Clara wasn't trying to break me physically. She was trying to destroy me mentally. And she had succeeded. I felt the walls close in around me, but there was a flicker of defiance left in me. You won't win, I said, though the words felt hollow. I'll find a way out. Clara smiled then, a cold, knowing smile. You already are out, Martin. The moment you questioned everything, you became part of something much bigger than you can imagine. This place, these people, the life you thought you had, it was all a part of the experiment. And now, you'll never escape. Suddenly, I felt it. The pressure, the weight on my chest, the confusion that had begun to consume me. It wasn't just the experiment. It wasn't just Clara. It was me. I looked around the room, and everything, the furniture, the walls, the door, seemed unfamiliar. The air grew thick. The more I looked at Clara, the less certain I was about her face. Was it her? Or had it changed? Had it always been her? And that's when I realized the truth. I had never left this place. Everything I thought I knew, my house, my life, my neighbors, it was all part of this twisted experiment. I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was part of the program. I had always been part of it. There was no escape. There was only the experiment. Clara stood there, watching me with the same calculating eyes. And I knew deep down that the real question wasn't about whether I could survive. It was whether I would ever truly know what was real again. Some secrets are too dangerous to stay hidden. But what if the most dangerous secret isn't one you're trying to keep? It's one someone else has been keeping from you your entire life. Ella stared at the locked front door, the one she hadn't touched in years. Her father's house, her childhood home, stood silent and waiting, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for her to return. The air inside was thick with the must of time. Untouched dust settled on the furniture, and everything, even the quiet hum of the walls, seemed as if it had been frozen in place the day she left for the city, years ago. The death of her father had brought her back, but she couldn't help feeling the weight of something else, something unresolved. There were too many gaps in her memory, too many unasked questions. Why had he lived so far from the family, keeping himself isolated? And why had he never spoken about his past in this house? Ella had always assumed it was simply because he liked his privacy. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Her father was a man who kept his distance from everyone, including her. The house was more than just bricks and wood. It held secrets, ones she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. But now, standing in the same kitchen where she'd spent her childhood, Ella couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. Something about this place still felt alive, as if it was waiting for her to discover the truth. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A quick text from her boyfriend, Lucas. "How's it going over there? Anything I can help with?" She stared at the screen for a moment, a hollow ache growing in her chest. Lucas, ever the pragmatist, didn't understand. He had no idea what it felt like to be standing in the house where everything had started, where memories clung to every corner. To him, it was just another task, a house to clear out and sell. She called him back. He answered on the second ring. "Ella, hey, everything good?" "Not really," she replied, her voice tight. "I'm at Dad's. There's so much more here than I thought. Old papers, stuff I don't understand." He sighed, clearly distracted. "I mean, it's an old house, right? You could just hire someone to take care of it and get it on the market. We could be done with it and move on." Her heart sank. He wasn't even asking about how she was holding up. Not about her father's death. Not about the emotional toll of it all. Just practicalities. Like always. "I'm not sure that's the best idea," she said quietly. "I think there's something here I need to understand first. Something about him. About..." Lucas's voice softened a little. But there was an edge of impatience. "Ella, I know it's hard, but you have to move on, okay? We need to. You're wasting time." "Yeah, I know." She hung up without waiting for his response. She looked around the kitchen again, at the half-empty coffee mugs, the old photo albums gathering dust on the counter, the smell of her father's tobacco lingering in the air. There was so much she didn't know, and the more she stayed here, the more the walls seemed to whisper to her. Why had her father kept his life so tightly wound? She needed answers, even if she didn't know where to start. The next day, Ella decided to begin going through the attic. Maybe there were old documents or personal items her father had hidden. It was a chance, she thought, to connect the dots, to understand who her father had really been in his last years. But as she climbed up the creaky stairs, a knock at the front door interrupted her thoughts. She hesitated for a moment, then went down to answer. It was someone she didn't expect, Danny. Danny, an older man who used to work with her father on various repairs around the house. He had always been friendly, but there was something about him that made her feel uneasy. He was dressed in a faded flannel, shirt, jeans that looked worn with age, and boots covered in dirt. His eyes, pale and intense, seemed to pierce right through her. "Ella," he said softly, "I heard your father passed. I'm sorry for your loss." She blinked, unsure of what to say. Thanks, Danny. You worked with him?" He nodded, though there was an uncomfortable pause as his gaze flickered past her, glancing at the house, the windows, the walls. "A long time. Been helping him out here and there. Repairs, maintenance, that sort of thing." Ella hadn't known her father had anyone helping with the house. Her father had always insisted on doing everything himself. She stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure of how to respond. "Look, I was wondering," Danny continued, his voice low, "if you needed any help with cleaning up. There's a lot of work here, things that need fixing up." Ella felt a prick of unease, but couldn't quite place why. She had planned to go through her father's things alone, but something about Danny's presence made her pause. He seemed to know the house well, too well for her comfort. "I suppose I could use some help," she said finally, her tone cautious. "But I'm not sure what needs to be done yet." Danny gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." Danny showed up the next morning as promised, bringing his toolbox and a thermos of coffee. He immediately got to work. moving through the house with the ease of someone who knew it inside out. He started with the roof, but Ella stayed inside, going through her father's things. As the day went on, she discovered more oddities. Receipts for supplies she couldn't account for. Payments to contractors she'd never heard of. References to work that seemed to be done under the table work her father never mentioned. But it was the journal she found in her father's desk that shook her the most. The entries were sparse, but they were enough to make her blood run cold. She read them slowly, her fingers trembling as she pieced together what her father had been trying to tell her, what he had been hiding from her for years. The last entry, dated just a few weeks before his death, sent a chill through her. I have made a terrible mistake. What started as kindness has become something else entirely. I thought I could keep him at bay, but he's too persistent. He talks about Ella as if she already belongs to him. He's convinced that my death will simply transfer ownership. I need to tell her the truth when she comes for the funeral. I need to give her the choice I never gave her. God forgive me for waiting so long. Some doors are better left closed. But once they're open, there's no going back. Ella sat at her father's old desk, the journal still in her hands, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just read. Danny's name kept appearing in the entries, in ways she hadn't noticed before. He had been watching her father, watching her, long before she had ever returned to the house. Her father had known something was wrong, but had never spoken of it. Her fingers hovered over the notebook, but she couldn't bring herself to open it again. Instead, she stood and went to the kitchen window, looking out at the sprawling yard, the same yard where she had played as a child, blissfully unaware of the darker secrets lurking around her. She thought about calling Lucas, but she couldn't explain any of this to him, not yet. She wasn't even sure she understood it herself. Ella. Danny's voice broke her from her thoughts, and she spun around to see him standing in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee in one hand, his expression unreadable. You okay? She hesitated, the tension between them thick. Yeah, just going through some of Dad's stuff, she replied, her voice strained. There's a lot I didn't know about him. Danny nodded, his pale eyes lingering on her with that familiar intensity. He was a private man, Ella. He had his reasons for keeping things from you. But some things, well, some things aren't meant to be kept hidden forever. Ella's heart skipped a beat. She stared at him, feeling a strange chill creep down her spine. What are you talking about? Danny walked into the room, his boots creaking on the old wooden floors. There are things you don't understand, things your father never told you. But you will, in time. You always do. Ella's stomach twisted. There was something off about his tone, something almost predatory in his calm demeanor. She felt her breath catch in her throat. What do you know, Danny? What's really going on here? His eyes softened, as if he were pitying her. It's not about what I know. It's about what you're going to learn. There's a lot more to this house, to your father, and to you, than you realize. Ella backed away from him, her pulse quickening. You're scaring me, Danny. He stepped closer, not threateningly, but with the same unnerving patience that had characterized his every move since she arrived. You should be scared, Ella. You've always been running from something, from the truth, from what your father was trying to protect you from. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ella struggled to find her voice. What are you talking about? My father was just trying to protect me from. From what? Danny smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only a cold, knowing certainty. From me, and from the life you're supposed to have. The life that's been waiting for you here, in this house. I've watched over you for years, Birdie, just like I promised your father. And now, it's time for you to understand. She flinched at the nickname. Don't call me that. Danny's smile didn't falter. It's who you are, always has been, and always will be. Ella spent the rest of the day trying to ignore the unease gnawing at her. She had learned so much, but the more she uncovered, the less she felt she understood. The journal, the strange references to Danny, Her father's cryptic words, it was all starting to blur into a web of secrets she couldn't untangle. That evening, as she continued searching through her father's papers, she came across another hidden folder. This one was old, yellowed with age, and tucked behind a stack of forgotten receipts. It was labeled Property History. She opened it carefully, her heart pounding in her chest. Inside, there were old blueprints of the house, maps of the surrounding land, and photographs of the house as it had been years ago. But the last page was what caught her attention. A handwritten note from her father, dated 2 months before his death. The cellar is the heart of this place. I've always known it, but I've never been able to leave it behind. I thought I could keep Danny out of it, keep him from the truth. But he's been part of this house for longer than I've been. It's not just the land or the house that binds us. It's something deeper. Ella needs to know before it's too late. Her father had known. He had known everything. Her hands shook as she read the note again, a sick realization settling in. Danny wasn't just a maintenance worker. He wasn't just a neighbor. He was something far more dangerous and far more embedded in this house than she could have ever imagined. As night fell, Ella found herself back in the kitchen, trying to make sense of everything. She had the note, the journal, and all the clues she had uncovered. But what did it all mean? Why had her father kept this from her? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She froze. Danny. She didn't want to open it. She didn't want to face him. But she knew she had to. She needed answers, and he was the only one who could provide them. She opened the door slowly. Danny was standing there, his usual calm demeanor hiding something darker in his eyes. "I think we need to talk, Bertie," he said, his voice soft and familiar. Ella stepped back, allowing him in. But she wasn't going to be passive anymore. She couldn't afford to be. "What is all of this, Danny? What have you been hiding from me? From my father?" Danny smiled again, but this time there was no gentleness in it, only an eerie certainty. "It's not about hiding, Ella. It's about protecting. I've been watching over you for as long as I can remember. You think you've been living your life, but you've always been part of this house, part of something bigger than you can comprehend." "Stop it," Ella snapped. "You've been watching me? For how long? My whole life?" He nodded slowly. "Since the beginning. Since you were just a child. Since before you even understood what it all meant." Ella felt the ground slip out from beneath her. Her whole life, she thought. All those years, all those moments she thought were hers, had they all been watched? Had they all been manipulated? When you uncover a secret buried deep in the past, the truth can be more dangerous than the lie that's been keeping you safe. Ella stood in the middle of the kitchen, the carved bird still in her hands, its weight suddenly far heavier than it had been earlier. It was beautiful, there was no denying that, but every detail in its smooth wood now felt like a symbol of everything she had tried to ignore. Everything Danny had done for her, to her. "You're wrong, Danny," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I don't belong here. I'm not yours to keep. I never was." Danny's smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes, a flash of anger quickly masked by that same sad, knowing expression. "You don't understand, Bertie. You never have. This house, your father, me, we've all been connected in ways you don't yet see. You've always belonged here, just like I've always belonged here." Ella felt her chest tighten as the words settled into her mind. "What are you talking about? You've been watching me, manipulating everything, and now you want to convince me that I belong here? That I've always belonged here?" She took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're insane." "Maybe," Danny said, his voice soft. "But sometimes it takes a little madness to understand what's real. Your father and I, we were the only ones who truly understood what was happening. That's why he kept you away from this place, from me. He didn't want you to know the truth. But now, he's gone, and it's time for you to understand. The house is calling you, Ella. It's always called you." Ella's breath hitched. "The house is calling you." The phrase echoed in her mind like a mantra, and she suddenly felt the overwhelming weight of the space around her. The walls, the floors, Even the air seemed to press in, as if the house itself had a pulse, a heartbeat. "Listen to me, Danny," she said, her voice growing more desperate. "This is my life. I've been living it. I've been out there, in the world, and I've been making choices. I'm not going to let you convince me that I'm meant to stay here with you." She glanced at the front door, her way out. "I'm leaving." Danny's expression darkened, and in that moment, the warmth he had shown her before vanished entirely. "You can't leave. I won't let you." His voice had dropped to a low, almost sinister tone. "You think you have a choice? You think you can just walk away from what you really are? What we really are? The connection between you and me isn't just about this house. It's about something deeper, something your father knew better than anyone." "Stop," Ella said, taking another step back. She was frightened now. Not just of Danny, but of the house itself. The weight of its silence, the secrets it kept in every creaking floorboard, every shadowed corner. She could almost feel it. It was alive. Danny stepped forward, blocking the door with his presence. "Ella, Bertie, please. You don't have to fight this. You don't have to run anymore. We've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you. Your father understood that. It's why he kept this all from you. Why he never told you the truth." His voice softened, almost tender now. "He wanted you to live your life. But he knew deep down you would come back to the place where you truly belong. You can't escape that. You never could." Ella's heart raced. She couldn't let him get any closer. Couldn't let him pull her back into the suffocating grip of this house. The man in front of her wasn't just a caretaker. He was a jailer. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "You're lying. You've been lying to me, manipulating me. My father wouldn't have wanted this. He wouldn't have wanted you to keep me here, in this prison." Danny's eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite place. It wasn't anger, but something colder, something darker. "You think I'm lying?" he said softly, his voice chilling in its calmness. "Then why do you feel it? Why do you feel the pull of this house? Why do you feel like you're meant to be here?" Ella's breath caught in her throat. He was right. She couldn't deny it. There was something about this place that tugged at her. Something she had tried to ignore for years. Something she had tried to push down since she left for California. But it had always been there, just beneath the surface. The connection, the pull. "You've always known, Ella," Danny continued, his voice a whisper now. "You've always known that you belong here with me. I've been waiting for you to accept it. We've both been waiting. Your father, me. We're not so different. We both saw something in you. Something special." Ella shook her head, backing up slowly, her pulse pounding in her ears. "You're sick," she whispered. "You're sick, and you're wrong. I'm nothing like you. I'm not yours. I don't belong to this house. I don't belong to you. You're wrong." The finality in Danny's tone hit her like a physical blow. His eyes, once filled with tenderness, were now ice cold, as though the mask had finally slipped. "You've always been mine, Ella. Always. And no matter where you go, no matter how far you run, you'll never escape me. You'll never escape this house." Ella felt her chest tighten as Danny's words crashed over her like a wave. There was no escape. Not from him. Not from the house. Not from the life he had woven around her. She turned quickly, heading for the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to get out of there. She had to get away from him, from the house. But as she reached the top of the stairs, the house seemed to shift. The walls seemed to close in around her. The once familiar space now felt foreign, hostile, suffocating. She looked back. Danny was standing at the bottom of the stairs, watching her with that cold, unwavering gaze. "You can run, Bertie," he said softly, "but you'll always come back."